Right here at 5:30 in depth as Brett Hankison, the only Metro police officer convicted by a jury in the fatal police raid at Breonna Taylor's apartment 5 years ago, gets a sentence from the federal judge yesterday, 2 years and 9 months with 3 years of supervised release. Not the sentence that he was expecting after the DOJ had recommended no jail time for Hankison just in the past 2 weeks. The judge, a Trump appointee, broke from their own recommendation, though. Retired LMPD Sergeant John Mattingly, who was shot in the leg during the overnight raid on Taylor's home, talked to us about it afterwards, and Nick Mudd is joining me. Nick, I want to read you directly his quote. John Mattingly said, "She," talking about the judge, "was in a horrible situation. I personally feel like she kind of rode the fence, so she kind of pleased one side, but not totally turned the other side off. And then ultimately, it's going to be in the hands of the appellate court or Donald Trump to pardon, and it kind of takes her out of the frying pan." That quote from John Mattingly, who was involved in the raid, to us yesterday. As we know, Hankison has previously been acquitted of state charges, and Nick is joining me here live. Is that the real possibility of how this case progresses? Because Brett Hankison was able to walk out of the courtroom last night. He is not in prison yet because he's awaiting for assignment. How do you see this playing out?
Well, she did let him self-surrender, which is not uncommon, okay? When you have somebody that's not really a flight risk, doesn't have a prior criminal history, and it's not mandatory for them to go into custody. Judge Jennings has always been fair to me. I've been in front of her several times. I have pending cases right now. And, you know, when allowed, self-surrender allows someone usually to be classified in either a camp, which is a very, very low-level facility, or a low-level prison facility. That being said, I know the Department of Justice really recommended no prison time at all. And this is a case that when we saw the Biden administration, they were pushing hard for this case. And I mean hard. And they hung before. They had a not guilty in state court, hung before in federal court, and they retried it again. And now we have the Trump administration, you know, in between, and now at sentencing saying, look, we don't even want any jail time. And so the judge is stuck in a situation where there are recommended guidelines here. And, you know, I know that she had a prior case from her recently regarding a civil rights violation of a corrections officer, and he was sentenced to around 30 months. So I think one of the main things with Judge Jennings is that she wants fairness and consistency.
Let's talk about the reality on whether Brett Hankison actually stepped foot in a prison because of what's getting ready to play out. I went back and looked. The last time we talked to you about this case, of course, our viewers know you from the recent Crystal Rogers case, but the last time we talked to you about this case, that conviction came down on a Friday, November 1st. 4 days later, Donald Trump was elected.
Right.
The whole DOJ started changing. That brings us to the point we are today. Does the president or anybody commute the sentence or give him a pardon?
Prior any other president, I would have said no, but, you know, we've seen so many pardons and commutations recently, it wouldn't surprise me. And the reason why I say that is because the order came down from the top, from somebody at least, we know from the Department of Justice, from D.C., stating, hey, we're not going to recommend jail time or prison time for Brett Hankison. You know, this was a case they pushed hard and fought hard. For them to do that in federal court, to push a case hard, go through a trial, and then suddenly backpedal at sentencing and say, we know we've done all this work, we've been through 2 trials, now we're just going to say, oh, we're good with the conviction and move on. You know, that's really unheard of, and it's unprecedented.
Do you expect appeals in this case? I mean, actually, people who thought that Brett Hankison was going straight to prison, that's not the case. He could be out for quite some time. He's not considered a flight risk at all. But how does this case play out before you even get to the stage of a possible pardon or commutation?
So, you know, in between there, usually you get an assignment at prison, and you literally, Doug, they give you a packing list, and you show up with your bags packed and appear. That being said, in between there could be a presidential pardon, or there could be a commutation knocking that sentence down. It could be home confinement, or you're just on an anklet. We don't know. And the reason why I could say that it's a possibility, normally I would say no possibility, but the possibility here is the DOJ walked in and recommended on a trial. I'm telling you, Doug, when you go to trial, there's what we call the trial tax, okay? If you go to trial and you lose, generally the government is going to say, you got to do some jail time. Judge, he made us prove our case. He didn't admit guilt. We're going to put him in prison or jail and make him do some time. That didn't happen here, and now the DOJ is backpedaling. So I wouldn't surprise me from the top if we see some sort of pardon.
Why do you think Rebecca Grady Jennings, who was a Donald Trump appointee, upended the DOJ recommendation? Why do you think she went against the DOJ's decision on this?
Because she wanted to be fair and consistent. I don't necessarily use the word upended it, because I think she's trying to be impartial. She's trying to be fair to every other criminal defendant that came before her and say, hey, look, I know they're recommending this, but I have to treat you like everybody else that came before me. Whether you agree or disagree with the verdict, that's a separate thing. But in terms of sentencing someone, she's trying to be consistent and fair. As I said, there was a prior case where someone got 30 months recently. So I think she was trying to keep in that range. And there is a recommended guideline range. It's not binding. She could have given him, probation, essentially, or gone all the way down to the bottom of the guidelines. But she didn't. And I think that her point was, look, I have to follow the law. I was appointed. No matter who appointed me, I'm going to follow the law and do what I was required to do.
All right, former prosecutor Nick Mudd and current defense attorney with the Mudd Law Group. Thank you very much. Good to see you again. You too.